From the Talk Radio WRNR studios, it's time for Eastern Panhandle Talk with Rob Mario and David Welch.
Thank you, Cliff. Good morning and welcome to the program. This first segment brought to you by L.A. Roberts Jewelers in historic downtown Martinsburg, committed to excellence in quality, design, and craftsmanship. L.A. Roberts Jewelers. Good morning, Dave.
Hey, good morning to you, Rob. And let's just start by saying that our hearts and our prayers are certainly with the families in Annapolis who are suffering so much today. And after the tragedy yesterday at the local newspaper there, it's unbelievably sad and kind of close to home.
A lot of people on Facebook tried to pin this on President Trump.
Well, of course they did.
And others who had made calls for violence against journalists. Certainly not a call you'd welcome anyway. It's a stupid thing to say.
Well, they haven't read the facts yet. This was a deranged young man in Annapolis who had a thing for that particular newspaper, and it had been going on for a very long time, 4 or 5 years, I guess, back and forth. And so people who want to blame Donald Trump for every ill in the world, they're just going to continue doing that.
No shortage of them last night on Facebook, but as more facts have come out, it appears that the shooter had issues with the newspaper, which had published this man's criminal activity, which had to do with stalking a person, harassing them on Facebook. He was upset with the newspaper for publishing it, and it was a long-standing feud, more on his side than the newspaper's side. The newspaper was just publishing an arrest record, really, and I guess there was an editorial about it, maybe at some point too. Either way, uncalled for actions by the shooter. Just a bloodbath inside that newspaper yesterday in Annapolis.
And people who try to make that connection to President Trump, I think, just look ridiculous. And they should check themselves before they type that first word into a social media platform.
Otherwise, we're looking at a heat wave in our area. Bob Kukin says we'll be in the 90s for the foreseeable future here, touching 100 on occasion, too. So if you don't have AC, this will be a good week to see a couple of movies a day.
Or hang out at the mall or do
There's
something.
No mall now.
Well, there's one in Hagerstown. There's one in Winchester.
Hang out at the restaurants that are.
Go to a museum in Washington. Do something.
Yeah, just get out of the heat.
Sit in your car.
It's going to be brutal. And it's the first real dose of summer that we've had.
Yeah, well, it's a big dose, that's for sure. But I'll tell you, the mornings are beautiful, aren't they? I mean, it could not be more beautiful outside.
Oh, yeah.
It's
quite
very,
nice.
very nice.
Coming up after the 8:30 break, we'll be joined by our panel this morning, Delegate Jason Barrett. Also joining us will be NRA Lobbyist Thomm, and in studio as well, Attorney Joe Ferretti. Now, we are awaiting a call from Senator Shelley Moore Capito, who will be joining us. She was there a moment ago. Unfortunately, her cell dropped as she was transitioning from Sherry, our producer, to us. So she's going to have to call us back, and we'll get that working right away, we hope. But either way, I put out yesterday feelers to all of our major elected officials at the federal level, Senator Joe Manchin, Senator Shelley Moore Capito, Representative Alex Mooney, and also Tally Sargent, who will be challenging Alex Mooney in the upcoming election in November. And the idea being that it gives them a chance to comment on the nomination that the president will make for the Supreme Court of the United States. Now, this is, as you pointed out yesterday, Dave, perhaps a generationally historic, important nomination to the Supreme Court because of the potential to tilt the court in a conservative direction, which you would assume President Trump would be appointing that type of a justice.
Yeah, you have to assume that. I think probably everybody on that list that he published prior to the Gorsuch nomination, in fact, I think he even published it in his campaign, they are going to be jurists with conservative, if you will, records. And so that's what the Senate is going to get. And all of the talk on the left in the Senate about trying to stop it and the arguments they're putting forth, they're all rhetorical. They can't stop this. McConnell is going to bring this to the Senate floor. There will be Democrats who will vote for this nomination. Now, there may be a couple of Republicans that don't vote for it. Who knows? You know, the Susan Collins of the world perhaps might not go for it. I don't know. We'll see how that plays out. But certainly senators Democratic senators up for re-election who represent states, so-called red states, won by Donald Trump in 2016, are going to be hard-pressed to not support this nominee. Interestingly enough, in a meeting yesterday, the first senators that Donald Trump met with, 5 senators, Joe Manchin included amongst those. The other 2 Democrats, the one from North Dakota and the one from Indiana, fellow Democrats in tough re-elections in red states, also included in that meeting. And so you can tell already that Donald Trump's reaching out to these Democrats who he will need, quite possibly, to get to that 51.
The first of our federally elected officials to respond to my invitation to come on the program was, not surprisingly, Senator Shelley Moore Capito, who I have to give the award for quickest turnaround for a request to appear on the show for 2018. Senator Capito, congratulations. You have finished first in the initial Rob Mario David Welch Awards category.
I want to be first in the Rob Mario contest, so here I am.
Well, you're kind of a fan favorite around here, so it's good.
Well, thank you.
It all worked out. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today, Senator.
Sure.
Your first reaction to the opening on the Supreme Court after Justice Kennedy made his announcement?
Well, I think my first reaction is to thank Justice Kennedy for 30 years of service on the bench. As I've learned more about a lot of the decisions he's made over the years, he's been very consequential. So I thank him for that. I think that the plan is that we will be moving forward quickly. We're going to, we're going to be in all of the summer, and we'll have time to consider the president's nomination. And I hope if he nominates somebody, which I think he will, in the way of Neil Gorsuch, I think we'll have a good, solid bench to make great and very consequential decisions.
I'm sure that the importance of this particular appointment is not lost on you. I mean, the consequences really are huge and could be huge for a long time, Senator.
It could be, and I think that Justice Kennedy was a swing vote. Obviously, at the end of June, made some very important decisions, and also on the Obamacare decision, he was the one who said that Obamacare was not constitutional, and then John Roberts said that it was a tax. So so that sort of sets the state of play for the next several years. And so I'm sure the president is considering his list. I think it's actually useful that he has a list out there, and I think that I look forward to meeting the nominee, whoever that may be.
What do you think of Minority Leader Schumer just coming out immediately within about 30 seconds and just saying that no one on that list is acceptable?
That's so typical of what Chuck Schumer does. He doesn't even look at the merits or look at the people, or it's all about the politics for him. And obviously he thinks that if the president is able to make a debate on whether we should have a conservative court and one that adheres to the Constitution, or a more liberal justice, which is what Chuck Schumer would want, that there'll be some merits to that in the election season. Quite frankly, I think if he were in Mitch McConnell's shoes, he'd be doing exactly the same thing. Some
who are represented by Chuck Schumer are saying that this should be held off until after the November elections. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that we obviously postponed the vote on Merrick Garland 2 years ago because President Obama was leaving, and we felt at the time that whoever the incoming president, whether it would be Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump, that they should be able to make that appointment and that decision. The difference this year is there is an election, but there's no presidential change. President Trump will be president after January. So I think to have a full bench is probably in the best interest, and it's a good time to have the debate.
Senator, have you been paying much attention to the West Virginia State Supreme Court issues that have been going on with our own justices here?
Well, I have been, actually, and, I think it's a sad day. I think that nothing more you want in your courts than trust and integrity and the feeling that, the people of the state are at the top consideration of the justices. I know that the legislature is handling this. I hope they do it expeditiously, but I just think it's a sad day for our state, quite frankly.
We have to hold these people to a higher standard than the average citizen, don't we? I mean, we can't make excuses for these guys. I'm hearing yesterday people making excuses saying, well, this justice didn't know that wasn't the law, and then once they found out, they paid the money back and made an apology. Can that fly? I don't think it should.
Well, understand. There are people in place in state government and in the federal government that if you have a question, you can call them and ask them. We have an ethics office in the U.S. Senate. If there's ever a question of who can pay for this, or can I accept that, or is this the right direction, just pick up the phone and call. And I heard somebody say the other day, which I thought was actually a good parenting tip, which I did not use, but maybe I'll use it on my grandchildren, that if you have to think about it for more than 10 seconds, you probably shouldn't do it. And I think that kind of common sense must go out the window. Maybe people don't think they're going to get caught, or they're just, skimming the surface. I don't understand it. I don't understand it.
You're not in Senator Trump's cabinet, but certainly the call for harassment by Maxine Waters, of the members of Donald Trump's cabinet, could easily be extended to any member of the Republican Party who votes for something the president wants passed. Do you have concerns about this sort of thing as you move around the country?
I do have concerns about the heat, and I don't. I know Maxine Waters very well because we served on the same committee together. And, she just has gone off the rails here. I think that, we need to respect one another, debate with civility, and teach our different constituencies that while we disagree, we all want a good, strong country, and we all have the same goals. So I think it's destructive behavior that she's engaging in, and I'm sorry to see it. And, I think in terms of public officials, you're just kind of walking around and in and among folks. You want to keep doing that because that gives you good feedback and the ability to engage with people on whatever issue or their families or whatever. I don't want to see a time where, you can't mix in with people because you're so afraid, or the risk to security becomes so high. And that's, I'm afraid, what we're heading towards.
Senator, I know that you're on a tight timeline. Any time for one more question?
Sure.
Just interested in any names that have come up, that have been discussed. Do any of those names strike you as one that you think you might be an early supporter of, such as Senator Mike Lee, fellow senator of yours in the...
Well, I certainly know Mike Lee very well and have great respect for him, but I'm going to I don't know anybody else personally or in any depth on the list, so I'll have to make a qualifier there. I looked at the list the other day. Most of the others are seated judges, and I think, in my view, that gives you a bit of an advantage simply because you've already made decisions in your courts and you've been out of the political realm for however many years you've been a judge, because judges are not and do not engage in political speech. So, we'll just have to see who the president comes forward with. I don't know the rest of them well enough to know, except I know that they are conservative judges who, in the vein of Neil Gorsuch, and I think he's just been a tremendous addition to the court.
Senator Shelley Moore Capito, thank you so much for your time this morning.
All right, thanks, guys. Have a good 4th.
Thank you. You too.
Happy 4th. Senator Capito appearing courtesy of the WV Medicine Jefferson Medical Center talk line. I forwarded you something yesterday, Dave, because it reminded me of you and your story of your friend who had been, I don't know if he was your friend, but your acquaintance who had been arrested for a murder he had committed 25, 30 years previous.
Right. And
DNA is ultimately what did him in, so to speak. So I'm reading a post by my brother-in-law's sister-in-law, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
They live in the Lancaster, Pennsylvania area.
Brother-in-law once removed, I think, or something like that.
Diagram that sentence. Yeah. He's on the 4th branch.
Yeah.
So they have a daughter who's getting married next summer, and they hired a DJ to do the wedding. Not uncommon, right?
Right.
This DJ, as it turns out, was arrested this week for a murder that was committed in 1992 of a 25-year-old 6th grade elementary school teacher at Rohrerstown Elementary in Pennsylvania. This fellow's a DJ, and ultimately, here's how it went down. The investigation, they'd interviewed 1,600 people over the years, more than 1,600 people, had not been able to solve this crime. Again, this happened in 1992. Some new DNA technology is available, and apparently there is a I wouldn't call it a website, but a place where you can send DNA evidence to, and they can try to find a match in their database. And the match came up with this fellow, this DJ, who's now 49 years old in the Lancaster area. And so the police went to an elementary school gig that this guy had. He was playing at an elementary school, threw away a piece of chewing gum and a water bottle he'd been drinking of. The police gathered the chewing gum without him noticing and the water bottle, took it in for testing. The DNA was a perfect match. And they arrested him and solved a crime that was 25 plus years old. And this DJ was the DJ that my brother-in-law's brother and sister had hired to play their daughter's wedding next summer.
Yeah, the DNA thing has worked both ways. It has gotten people convicted who have been in prison for a very long time for a murder they did not commit, and it has also been able to solve a lot of cold cases around the country. And you're right, it's a very similar story to the one that I shared with you a couple of years ago when a very close friend of my wife and I's from Beaver, Pennsylvania, had committed a murder. He was convicted, ultimately, of committing this murder in 1978. So it had been, 30 years as a cold case. And what they did in that particular case is that they preserved, it was involved some sexual stuff. So the officer on duty preserved the sheets where the murder took place on the bed for all of these years, when DNA did not even exist then. And
the technology, you mean?
Yeah, 30 years. The technology. 30 years later, when the state police in Pennsylvania opened up a lab with the capability of testing DNA samples in a very accurate way, he sent this sheet off to the state police lab in Pennsylvania. They, did the DNA test, and Scott, who is the guy's name, had been a suspect, one of 4 or 5 possible suspects. He was a city councilman in Bridgewater, Pennsylvania at the time.
Bridgeville or Bridgewater?
Bridgewater, Pennsylvania, right next to Beaver. And the way they got his DNA was that, because he wouldn't give it up, which to me, that tells you right then.
Sure.
Yeah, really? You're not going to give me your DNA? All the other people gave, sure, I'll cut my hair, do whatever you want to do. What they did with him is that I think it was the police chief, went in and got a styrofoam cup that Scott had thrown away in a garbage container, and they examined the cup, and it was a match to. That's how they got him. Yeah, and he's been in prison since.
This is the same technology they used to catch the Golden State Killer in California earlier this year. The lab is Parabon, Parabon, Parabon Lab, and they say that the odds of it being someone other than this guy, this is how sure they are with this DNA technology they have developed even further than what you think that you had during OJ's case, right? 1 in 200 octillion chance that it's someone other than this guy.
That's amazing. I mean, that really is amazing. And you bring up OJ. I mean, that's really, what was 1995, 96?
Mm-hmm.
That was really the first case, I think, that was tried. Not the first big public case, but the first case tried using DNA evidence.
1 in 200. I don't even know what that looks like zeros-wise.
How many commas would that be?
There's trillion, quadrillion. I mean, I don't know. I guess octillion would be to the 8th.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that your relative's relative are going to be finding a new DJ for their
It's a real good chance.
Yeah, I would think. That would be up in the octillion chance range, I would think.
Even if this guy isn't convicted, I'm guessing they're not going to hire him.
Probably not.
To hire him anyway, right?
Exactly.
It's at 8:27, 4th of July week next week. A little change in our programming here. We're going to be out on Wednesday. We'll have some patriotic program that we've selected and we'll play in place of our program on Wednesday morning. The Nationals will be starting early that day.
Yeah, they have an 11 o'clock game that day. Is that because they want to let people get out, come to the game, and then go enjoy their own festivities, I guess.
I can't tell you what their thought process is.
Well, it might just be crowd control, too, because July 4th night in Washington, D.C. is a crazy event on the mall.
Well, the whole day down there is pretty. I've only done it once, and I didn't go back and do it again because it was just too much. And with the heat and humidity in Washington, D.C., you're jammed in there like sardines. And let me tell you this.
That's really weird for an 11 o'clock game. It's really weird for the players.
Oh, they got to wake up and...
I mean, they're not used to waking up and playing it, because a ball player needs to be at the park about 3 hours before the game. Batting practice, fielding practice, all the things they do. So Major League Baseball players are not used to going to the ballpark at 8 o'clock at night. I wonder, the game the night before, is it a night game or a day game? Because if they're playing a night game that gets over at 10:30 at night and then have to be back at 8 o'clock the next morning, they're not going to like that very much.
You know what, though? They make a pretty good buck. They'll have to suck it up a little bit.
Minimum wage at $550,000.
The week next week will go as such. So Wednesday, we're not here. On Thursday, Dave is here, and on Friday, I'm going to go into the basement and chill for a couple of days. I'm going to take a 5-day weekend.
Nice.
As Mr. Hornby's gracious enough to give us Wednesday the 4th as a paid holiday.
Very nice.
I'm going to ride it out, take off Thursday, Friday, and, of course, Saturday, Sunday, and be back the following week.
Sweet.
So you'll be on your own. Matt Miller will be in for me next week after Tuesday. So he'll be here Thursday and Friday.
We'll get through it.
And by the way, I miss our intern, Savon. She'd.
Do you think she's thinking of us today?
Yes, I do.
Do you?
Even though it's a wedding weekend with her
You
family.
think I think we've gotten to her.
I think that anybody who's a part of our day for 2 hours, when they're no longer around us, I think there's like a little hole in their life.
I think so.
We've
got the crew in at after the 8:30 break. Joe Ferretti, Jason Barrett, Art Thomm, all in. Good group. We're gonna. I think there's a few things to talk about.
There is
on the political scene these days, so there should be no shortage of. There won't be any dead airspace, I don't think, during the hour and a half. So we hope that you'll all stay with us during what I would anticipate being a great discussion. I hear a lot about that Friday morning out and about. People enjoy that political discussion. And what I hear over and over again is people telling, listeners will tell me that it's very refreshing that you all can sit around the table with different points of view and have a civil, I'm not making that word up, civil conversation. So we'll try and keep it that way.
Rules is rules, although we will permit some yelling at times. And by the way, the pressure's on you to give out your Snickers bars today, because nobody on Monday wants to hear what happened to your Snickers bars when you forgot to give them away.
I haven't even brought up Snicker bars.
Well, I'm just telling you. I'm reminding you. You know how you remind me to turn on the YouTube?
I remind you of a lot of things.
I'm reminding you about your Snickers bars.
The things I remind you of are things that have to be reminded of. You did not have to bring up the Snicker bars.
I just want to remind you of that.
Okay. Obviously you felt the need to do that, Rain Man.
I did.
Okay.
And I got a text from Matt Miller to remind me to tell you about it too. And you know what that means. It's 8:31. Our news break is now.
CBS News Update. The man suspected of killing 4 journalists and a sales assistant at the Capital Gazette in Annapolis, Maryland, has a court appearance this morning. Jared Ramos has been charged with 5 counts of first-degree murder. CBS's Nora O'Donnell.
Annapolis is in shock. The police chief telling me this morning that they believe that the suspect acted alone. He has been held in the Anne Arundel County Jail last night, and they're frustrated. He is not cooperating with them.
Chief Timothy Altamari.
We're frustrated. We know what happened. We're still working on a lot of the whys.
They do know Ramos lost a defamation suit against the paper in 2012 after it published a story about his guilty plea in a harassment case. CBS's Chip Reed spoke to Brennan McCarthy, attorney who represents the woman Ramos had targeted.
He says it could have been him. It could have been the attorney. It could have been his client. He said that this person was so unhinged, so malevolent, that it was inevitable that he was going to kill or try to kill somebody at some point.
CBS News Update. I'm Deborah.
Now your local news from Talk Radio WRNR. The man who dumped chicken manure outside the Red Hen, the Lexington, Virginia restaurant that threw out White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders last week, hails from the Martinsburg area. The Herald Mail reports that Reginald C. will be making a court appearance next Friday. He was charged on Tuesday with littering animal waste and obstruction. The Shepherd University Martinsburg Center will offer new dual enrollment courses for high school students in the upcoming school year. Those courses include college algebra, general biology, and pre-calculus. You can apply online by selecting the High School Students tab on the Shepherd University admissions page. Tickets are $40 each for the annual Blue Ridge CTC Scholarship Benefit Bluegrass and Barbecue. Live entertainment comes courtesy of Ernie Bradley and the Grassy Ridge Band. That benefit is Friday, August the 24th from 5:30 to 8 at the Purple Iris. I'm Adam Boardman, Talk Radio WRNR News.
Hot and sunny this afternoon as temperatures soar into the lower 90s on a very light northwesterly breeze. Tonight with a clear sky, the early morning low back to about 67. And then for tomorrow and for Sunday too, back-to-back days of intense heat. The forecast high near 97 each day. Heat index, that heat-humidity combination, makes it feel like 100 to 105 degrees possibly. We get to Monday, it's still hot and humid with highs in the middle 90s, and that trend carries us right on into the early parts of next week and right on into the 4th of July holiday. I'm Bob Kukin, Talk Radio, WRNR.
Life is complicated, but your finances shouldn't have to be. At BCT, we simplify your financial life. Bank of Charlestown is a locally owned community bank with 7 conveniently located offices serving the Eastern Panhandle of West Virginia, Middleburg, Virginia, and their newest office in Hagerstown, Maryland. With over 140 years of experience, BCT is the tri-state area's choice for fast, convenient, and hassle-free banking solutions. Whether you are a high school senior looking for a student checking account, a college graduate purchasing a new car, a first-time home buyer, or investing for retirement, BCT has flexible solutions to fit your lifestyle. BCT is committed to providing everyday ways to simplify your financial life. Also, make sure you are following BCT on Twitter and Instagram at MyBCT or like their Facebook page to see how BCT reinvests local deposits back into the communities they serve. BCT, we simplify your financial life.
Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
Saturday, July 7th, Valley Guns 2 is having their 5th annual Boardwalk Sale and Smith & Wesson Range Day event. Browse 108 feet of sale and clearance items and test fire a wide selection of Smith & Wesson handguns, like the Smith & Wesson MP 2.0 9mm full-size semi-auto and the MP 2.0 compact, or the Model 60 Pro Series revolver. A Smith & Wesson factory rep will be on site to answer all your questions. It's the 5th annual Boardwalk Sale and Smith & Wesson Range Day event at Valley Guns 2, Exit 5 off I-81, Inwood, West Virginia.
Hi, honey.
Where are you?
I've been in line at the post office for the last 30 minutes.
Why are you at the post office? It'll take you all day.
Where else do I go to ship my packages or drop FedEx off at?
Honey, going postal is way faster, has less lines, and friendly service.
Where's going postal?
It's right in the Common Shopping Center in Martinsburg. They'll ship your packages quickly, and you can avoid the lines.
Going postal should be your first choice for all your shipping needs. Going postal, the Commons, Martinsburg.
Since 1877, Farmers and Mechanics Insurance Companies have proudly supported our local community. Farmers and Mechanics has the insurance products to meet your needs, including home, auto, farm, dwelling fire, business owners, and umbrella coverage. Please contact your local independent agency for a review of your insurance needs and ask for a policy from the company that knows you best. Farmers and Mechanics Insurance Companies, just off Edwin Miller Boulevard on Administrative Drive in Martinsburg. FMIWV.com.
Welcome back to the program, Eastern Panhandle Talk with Rob and Dave. The Friday edition of the program brought to you this morning by Miller Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Route 9, east of Martinsburg, home of the lifetime powertrain warranty. And be the lifetime of the car, not the lifetime of you, David Welch.
That'd be a great warranty.
That would be a warranty right there. You got a warranty.
Except as you get older and older, those warranties would become cheaper than I would imagine.
It would be like the reverse of term insurance, right?
It would cost Jason Barrett more to get that warranty than me.
Because he's young.
Yeah.
But he leads a reckless lifestyle.
He does.
So
he does.
Maybe not as much as you think then, you know. JB, good morning to you.
Good morning. I think that reckless lifestyle is taking Democrats on, or Republicans on all by myself in the Eastern Panhandle.
You are a lone ship.
And at least in the House, anyhow.
You are one man, an island amongst a sea of Republicans in this area.
He's kind of a Boy Scout, too.
John Unger, also a Democrat. But has anybody talked to or Seen John lately?
I haven't talked to John in a while.
Is he running a Rose Garden strategy for re-election, or?
That's the question you'd have to ask of him.
Okay.
He's been very quiet throughout all of the stuff going on in Charleston. I've not heard or read a comment from John in any of the articles.
Hope he's feeling okay. You know, he was sick there for
the
a
heart
while.
thing, yeah.
Right.
So Joe Ferretti is here as well. Joe, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. Good morning, everybody.
Good to see you. That's now the Joe Ferretti Law Office. After David Hammer paid you a visit, he said, Joe, you, sir, are on your own.
No, the voters of the Eastern Panhandle determined that.
Notice he's got his Iona shirt on today. And I'll tell you why he's wearing that shirt. Same reason I wear like a William and Mary shirt. You know, at $50,000 a year, you do get to deserve to wear the T-shirt.
Yeah, that's what I got.
Exactly.
For the $50,000.
Exactly.
No, it's 50 when your kid was in school.
It's probably
it's 60 now that his kid's in school.
Probably more than that now.
Art Thomm, too, is here as well. Art, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Art, it seems like whenever we have you in there, it seems to coincide with another shooting. And clearly when I invited you in Monday, we had no way of knowing in advance what was going to be happening. But this situation Thursday in Annapolis obviously is national headlines this morning, and another tragedy.
Terrible.
Yesterday, David and I talked about this in the first segment on Facebook. Not that this is where you get the temperature of America, but maybe it is. Who knows? There were an awful lot of people making a connection to President Trump's dislike of journalists and the rally he had recently, which he called out journalists once again, and pinning this on President Trump. David says no validity to that. Jason, Joe, any thoughts?
Well, I think that it's the evidence that has come out, or at least the speculation that's come out about this particular suspected shooter, that it was a beef that he had with the news. With the news about being an article that they wrote in the newspaper, and he sued them and lost. So it looks like this is kind of a personal issue. Mm-hmm. I do think that the president's comments and the things that he says and the way that he presents them doesn't help the cause. I think it, and I'm certainly not going to defend what Maxine Waters did, because that's just as those comments are just as bad. But I think that both parties have to realize that the tone that they use, that people listen to this, and it does instigate some of this kind of behavior. Now, clearly, it appears that this guy is acting on an issue that's between him and the newspaper, not anything fueled by partisan politics.
Joe?
Well, on a morning where we're hearing news reports that somebody was motivated in this area to drive over to out the outskirts of D.C. and dump chicken manure because of a political flap, I think we have to be concerned a little bit about motivations of people. The Charlie Hebdo shootings in France was motivated by a Muslim cartoon, right? And that's why that was attacked, apparently. So while this doesn't, I agree with Jason, this doesn't appear to be connected directly from the president and others' rhetoric about the press to what happened over in Annapolis, I still think it's time to pause and reflect about some of the discussions that are ongoing in the country and things that can be stirred up and people that can be motivated towards violence because of some of the rhetoric. I think that's a worthy discussion. I don't know that it applies directly here.
It does not apply here, but on a much broader kind of perspective on this, in this country right now, I think one of the questions that we all have to ask ourselves is that if we look back on America's history, we have a long history of racial hatred, of religious hatred. I mean, that's part of the history of this country. I wonder, though, if we're entering into a new phase now where that same kind of division and same kind of hatred is now about who you're for or what party you belong to. It seems to me to have that same kind of feel. I've shared stories on the air before about how Debbie and I have actually lost friends because we weren't of the same political party as them, or did not feel as strongly as they did about certain issues, that we don't care for the poor or whatever that might be. But I think it's a very dangerous area that we're moving into as a nation. I'm kind of concerned about it, and I wonder if those people that are out there saying that we're actually in a civil war right now I didn't believe that 2 or 3 years ago. I'm starting to believe that now, that this country is kind of in a civil war. It's the upheaval and the division over your beliefs versus my beliefs is really deep and troubling.
Yeah, I think that's been referred to. I'm sorry, Art. I think that's been referred to as tribalism, right? That everybody seems to be running to their own corner, they get on this apparatus, this iPad, and get on the internet, and they look for information that confirms their belief. It's confirmation bias, and they get hardened. And I think you're right. I think in some respects, it's cultural, it's sociological, it's a lot of different things involved here. But tribalism, I think, is a pretty good term for what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've had these conversations, through the years, and about some of my friends who would say, why are you even talking to that person? They're, conservative, or they're liberal, or whatever the circumstances are, and I tell them, I don't care about that, or I don't care about this issue or that issue, more so than they do, and they, those folks believe that, man, you shouldn't even talk to each other when you're to that point. And when we look at the stuff that's going on, Dave, I think you're right. We've gotten to a point where there isn't just a disrespect, but it's a plain hatred and disgust for each other. And you go down to either to Charleston or to other capitals where the politics is at play, and some of the relationships that you have there can be challenged because of where you're supposed to sit and who's in charge and what's going on. It's
let me tell you
difficult.
Where I think the difference is now versus, let's look back in the 90s and the division of Bill Clinton and Newt Gingrich, right? You were on Newt Gingrich's side or you were on Bill Clinton's side in the 90s, it seemed. And I have to tell you, for the most part, I had no idea back then what my neighbors' or friends' political viewpoints were. Clueless.
And you probably didn't care.
And I was happy to not know.
Right.
Because I really, honestly, when I leave here, if somebody wants to get into a discussion of politics with me, I'll politely stare at you and wait for you to be done, and then I'm not going to engage the conversation. I'm just not. Okay? But now I can go on Facebook each night, and I can look at people I know very well, and I can look at how much they hate anyone who doesn't agree with them about their political viewpoints. I can go on Facebook like I did last night, and I can look at people I know who I've had lunch with and have enjoyed conversations who hate Donald Trump so badly that if you disagree with their viewpoint on Donald Trump, you are called names. You're not worthy of being on their comment list. How many of us have not read at least somebody who's posted something on Facebook and said, if you disagree with this, I'm defriending you, I'm dropping you? That is what's so common now. Before, we could watch from a distance as Newt Gingrich and Bill Clinton disagreed in public about political views, and we could hear the commentators on TV, people we'd never know or meet for the most part, other than David, who ran in those circles for a long time and probably knows half the people who are commenting on TV casually one way or the other. But for the most part, most of us never will meet these people. So it was just some people from a distance who disagreed, and then we went out and we talked to our neighbors and we mowed the grass and went to their cookouts, and everybody got along fine. Now I can go on Facebook and find out half of my neighborhood hates the other half of my neighborhood, and half the kids I graduated with hate half the other kids that they graduated with, and have no interest at all in hearing their disagreements or their opinions on anything. I didn't know that 25 years ago, and I was happier then.
But is part of the problem that people haven't talked about politics in social settings over the past, since 1992 and when Bill Clinton was elected, and then obviously the Democrats and Republicans really started the fight then. But is that part of the problem, is that we haven't as a society been able to talk about politics in social settings and in different venues other than just in the political realm? And now that people are starting to do it on social media and those things, they've learned how to talk about politics from watching people on Fox News and MSNBC, where all they do, because it's good ratings, is bicker back and forth. There's one side doesn't want to take the opportunity to try to understand where the other side is coming from. So, I understand your point about when somebody wants to talk politics with you, that you just let them speak and then you're finished. But why can't we have civil discussions between friends or acquaintances about politics, and at the end of the day we can agree or not agree, but that doesn't mean that we're still not going to be friends. That's the part that I don't understand.
That's easy, Jason. That's because you're a dirty liberal Democrat.
I agree with Art on that point.
But Rob, it's an excellent point.
Hey, Jason's my friend, so just cool it.
He's your friend while you're in the room with him, but when you're not here,
he's my friend too.
I think we know more about people than we sometimes need to or want to know.
Ever wanted to know. Yeah.
I had a similar experience, Rob. The other day, somebody who I have practiced law with from another state, but we've joined up, we've worked cases together for over 20 years. He mistakenly sent me an email.
Mm-hmm.
I was in a chain, I was included in there, probably hit the wrong key.
Because everybody has about 100 Joes in their emails.
Exactly. So up comes this email from this fella, and I'm reading it, and it's entirely political. And after I read it, I said, I never knew him. I never knew him that way.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't. And I had to take a step back because it's been such a great relationship that, and his opinions were a little bit different than mine, but I took a step back and said, I just have to block that out because I personally love the man. But when I saw that, I said, we never had any similar type discussion between us, but there it was in black and white. And it just struck me as another window into this fellow that I never looked through before, never saw.
Sure.
Never had an opportunity to. But for a mistake on the email, I would never know this. So at night when I was trying to go to sleep after that event, I had to really just program myself to say, that's never going to be an issue. It can't be between us because we're such good friends. So,
but now,
but see,
well, that reminds me to say that one of the questions that younger people ask now of a potential partner, in dating, is they've got to get that political party thing straight because a Republican does not want to marry a Democrat, vice versa. So we would have never thought in our day, I don't think, of ever really making that part of the falling in love process.
Okay,
I didn't know my wife's politics until we were married a couple of years.
And I don't know if I would necessarily care what party the person was involved as or what have you. I think where you get into some issues from experience is when you have, such different views on near everything political.
Let me throw something out to you.
Yeah.
Then. Let's say, and I'm not, so it's only hypothetical. But let's say that I was I was a proponent of gun control.
Mm-hmm.
I might even want to take some guns away. I would want to limit ownership on firearms.
Okay.
Would you come to my house for dinner? Would you go out to lunch with me? Would you be my friend? Would you sit politely next to me on this radio show? That would be hard for you. It's hypothetical. But that would be difficult for you, given the depth of your belief in Second Amendment rights.
Right. It would be difficult on the radio show. In a professional circumstance, absolutely. There's a former delegate in this area who was certainly anti-gun, and I would see him at fundraisers out and about with Delegate Barrett once or twice. And, when it came to our politics, we didn't agree on anything. And, and I would joke with the guy and say, hey, going to get your vote on this year? And he'd be like, you're not. And I'd say, okay, and that's fine. But, we got along just fine, I would say. Jason?
I don't know who you're talking about, but sure. I'm sure you guys did.
304-263-6540 and 6586 if you want to be a part of our discussion here today. And I'll tell you, the one thing, we're going to go to the phones in just a second here, but go back 25 years, if I had a political discussion with somebody, which I was much more apt to do in my 30s than I'm about to do in my 50s, but if I had that discussion in person, it was generally because I think we're more civil when we're standing next to somebody than when we're hiding behind our keyboard, a person who may be 1,000 miles away, who we may never see again in our lives. It's a lot easier to start throwing out the bombs than it is when you're there in person with somebody. If I disagree with Joe now, I'm probably not likely to start dropping F-bombs at him and talk to him about how much I can't stand his ancestry and everyone who brought him into the world made a huge mistake. Not that I feel that way, Joe. Not that was sitting around in my head or anything.
Wow, that went on for a while, didn't it?
Just saying, But if I'm on Facebook and we're disagreeing, maybe that's what comes out because I may never see Joe again. Hey, let's go to the WVU Medicine. That's a hypothetical, Joe. I love you, man. Let's go to the WVU Medicine Berkeley Medical Center talk line. Ken from Inwood is there. Ken, how you doing, buddy?
Good morning, everybody. And also on Facebook, there's no vocal tone. So you can't tell, like, a little tongue-in-cheek humor. You can't tell the inflection in the voice over a keyboard.
Very true.
But I'm not going to blame Facebook too much on this. Just a little bit. Now that everyone can be connected, but you also got to blame our politicians on both sides. I think we became more and more tribal after the 2010 when everything got redistricted, and you had moderate Republicans or moderate Democrats and what have you gerrymander their districts so bad to where they don't have to listen to opposing views. They just listen to everybody that believes in them, and then it becomes who could become more left or who could become more right. And I think that was pretty much the pinnacle was in 2010. Then you start hearing the rhetoric.
I want to get two people weigh in, because one of those people is David Welch, who's run campaigns and understands how to reach a certain microscopic demographic in your community that would get you elected, and Jason Barrett, who's run several campaigns and won elections. Gentlemen, what do you think about what Ken said?
I'm not sure I'm answering the question directly, but I'll kind of give you a thought on generally, Ken, on my thinking about candidates reaching voters and how it relates to social media. I think in the old days before social media, campaigns were sort of one way. The candidate ran for office, articulated a message, vote for me, and at the same time, don't vote for the other guy. And the access to getting that message out was really limited to some newspaper ads, maybe some direct mail pieces. All those things are still used now. But now what's happened with social media, it's very interactive. And so what is created in the technology of social media has given every voter potentially what they've always wanted to have, and that was a voice and an opportunity to express their opinion. And so what we have now, all social media is a technology version of everybody getting in the town square and sharing opinions. And so it's not social media per se that has created the mess. It's that we've always been messy. It's just that now we have a way to express that and talk about it. Everybody can be a journalist now.
We can see it more openly.
Well, Ken, I think you make a good point about redistricting and the gerrymandering that is going on. And what happens, and the reason that some of those, that you see so many members of Congress now either moving way far to the left or way far to the right, is because their districts that's what they have to do in their district. Because, if they become a centrist and they try to appeal to both sides, then they have to worry about a primary opponent that's going to attack them from either the left or the right. It's going to be harder to get campaign contributions from folks across the country when they see, a Democrat that, is maybe moderate on a couple of issues, or a Republican that's moderate on a couple of issues. So the gerrymandering and creating these extremely red districts and extremely blue districts, I think that you make a good point that has really caused really kind of fanned the flames on a lot of this partisan divide.
Yeah, and what we also see I'm unfortunately I got to use it as an example, but it's recent, where during Obama's Supreme Court trial nominee, that didn't make it because Mitch McConnell said this, and that. And then not only 2 days ago, you see him say complete opposite. And I hate to use that as an example, but it's kind of like people are seeing that and go, how can you be so hypocritical? And then you just blame all the politicians, get them all out of office. The DC needs an enema.
Senator Capito addressed that in our segment right after the 8 o'clock news when she mentioned that it was the end of President Obama's presidency, whereas this is not the end of President Trump's presidency. He still has 2 more years to go after the midterms.
Well,
that's the difference.
You could say that now, and that he didn't make that. He didn't say that during when he made that example. He didn't say when it was supposed to. He said it was a political season. So everyone's parsing words now, and it just puts a bad taste in everyone's mouth, and that's why now people are either don't want to vote anymore, don't want to get engaged, and then get very emotional on Facebook, where it's a point where we have become tribal. So.
Well, it's interesting that the answer is, well, I'm not going to vote anymore, or I'm not going to get engaged, because the only way you ever change something from what it is to what you might like it to be is to, in fact, go out and get engaged and to exercise your vote.
Oh, I agree. No, I'm not saying me. I'm always going to vote. That's my civic duty.
I think the problem that a lot of voters have is that they They would agree with that. They have to find somebody worth voting for, and I think that a lot of people across this country have seen that one party is no better than the other. I think that they have seen that a lot of from the Democratic perspective, that if they don't like a lot of the things that this Republican Congress is doing, they don't like the things that the President Trump is either doing or saying, but Democrats have to offer them a message, and they can't just say we're anti-Trump, we're anti-Republican. The Democrats have to bring ideas to the table,
and the Democratic challenge right now is that this is a party that is drifting left, ever so leftward. And you look at the primary that happened I'm not talking about West Virginia. We don't maybe feel it as much here, Jason, but around the country, this is a Democratic Party that is drifting fast to the left. And you could see that on some of these primaries where the Bernie Sanders faction, if you will, are winning primaries, such as the one over the very established leader in New York the other day. And that this is going to be a real problem for them because America is not as left as the National Democratic Party is.
And did she win because she's, and I don't know the all the aspects of this race that well, but did she win because she's so far to the left, and maybe she is or she isn't, I don't even know.
She's an avowed Bernie Sanders supporter and an avowed what she calls a democratic socialist.
Or did she win because she is running as an anti-establishment candidate against someone who has served 10 terms, against someone who is kind of aligned with Nancy Pelosi? I mean, do we really know the factors as to why she won? Bernie Sanders.
Well, she had a very clear message, and she articulated that very clear message at the grassroots level with a very effective campaign. The incumbent spent $3 million in this race.
Well, did you hear how quickly Pelosi dismissed the theory that the win was a statement against the establishment Democratic Party? She dismissed that very quickly.
Well,
almost dismissively.
There's no one more out of touch in the Democratic Party than Nancy Pelosi. So,
well, that's agreed.
Ken, thanks for the call.
Yeah, have a go, guys. Good show.
Ken on the W Medicine Jefferson Medical Center talk line. Well, I'm not sure if you read about the landlord comments at the mall in was that Fairmont or Morgantown, I guess, yesterday. Apparently, he doesn't have any record of a lease being broken, and is in fact, when he bought the bankrupt property, the state was basically on his payroll, or he was on their payroll.
I think he likes that $30,000 a month.
Who wouldn't?
He said, "I'll get around to counseling."
Maybe more on that.
He still wants
after the
he still wants the money.
WRNR Martinsburg.
This is CBS News on the Hour, sponsored by Zoom Video Conferencing.
I'm Deborah Rodriguez. The suspect in the shooting rampage at a newspaper in Maryland has a court appearance scheduled in an hour and a half. Jared Ramos has been charged with 5 counts of first-degree murder. Correspondent Stephen Portnoy is in Annapolis.
Shooting suspect Jared Ramos pleaded guilty to harassment in 2011 after he targeted a high school classmate online. The newspaper wrote about the case, sparking a years-long grudge that Ramos held against the Capital Gazette. Lawyer Brennan McCarthy represented the stalking victim, and he tells CBS News when he heard about the shooting here,
"I knew who did it. He did it."
Editors went to police about Ramos in 2013, but authorities say there's nothing they could have done. Stephen Portnoy, CBS News, Annapolis.
The Capital Gazette published today's paper in a parking lot. The editorial page is blank, save for the names of the 5 staffers killed and the words, "We are speechless." President Trump sat down with 6 senators at the White House, bipartisan mix, to talk about the upcoming vacancy on the Supreme Court. Timing, the key issue for Mr. Trump in replacing retiring Justice Anthony Kennedy. CBS's Nancy Cordes.
Senate Republicans are pushing for a quick nomination and confirmation process. They want to make sure that they take care of this while they still have a razor-thin majority in the Senate, 51 to 49, because there is a chance the Democrats could take control of the Senate in the midterm elections this fall.
Former Trump campaign manager Paul Manafort will be in court this morning. CBS's Gary Nunn.
This will be a pretrial hearing in Alexandria, Virginia for Manafort. It is his first court appearance since a federal
federal judge revoked his bail and ordered him to jail for jury tampering. Manafort, in this case, is charged with tax and bank fraud.
Long holiday weekend will be a scorcher across a big chunk of the country. CBS News meteorologist David Parkinson.
The heat wave is going to be on for what could be a third of the population of the entire United States. More than half of the country is going to have a temperature of 90 degrees on Friday and Saturday, and then it's going to just keep cooking well into the 4th of July holiday.
It's curtains for Toys R Us.
I'm Jim Crisula. The end for Toys R Us stores today is like the death of a longtime friend for many people.
It's just been around forever, and I don't remember it not being around. It'll be missed.
I guess everything kind of comes to an end at some point in time.
Goodbye to our childhood store.
There were more than 700 Toys R Us stores nationwide as recently as March. More than 30,000 workers have lost their jobs, including Jeffrey the giraffe.
More games, more toys. Oh, boy! I want to be a Toys R Us kid.
Picture of Jeffrey with his suitcase packed has gone viral. S&P futures up 9. This is CBS News.
Zoom video conferencing, featuring video and audio clarity with screen sharing. Free accounts are available at zoom.us. That's zoom.us. Zoom video conferencing.
This is a special announcement for all Americans who owe back taxes to the IRS or state. Pay attention. There's a special toll-free hotline set up especially for you. This hotline will give you free information on how you can legally reduce or eliminate your tax debt. Call the taxpayer hotline today at 800-441-1943. Grab a pen or put the number in your cell phone. 800-441-1943. You'll speak with qualified professionals who tell you how to stop the collection calls, IRS letters, bank levies, and wage garnishments. And they'll deal directly with the IRS on your behalf, so you don't have to. Even if you haven't filed returns or you already are in a payment plan, you can still get relief. New IRS settlement policies have opened the doors for a fresh start. But hurry, this won't last forever, and your tax problem will only get worse if you do nothing or try to handle it yourself. It makes a big difference in who you call. So call the taxpayer hotline today for free information. 800-441-1943. 800-441-1943.
Now your local news from Talk Radio WRNR. The charges are embezzlement and financial exploitation of an elderly person. Authorities say that between last December and this May, 43-year-old Robin Reeves of Philadelphia stole money from 2 places in Martinsburg where she worked. The manager at the first place complained to police about her, and in the second instance, a relative of the victim told police about unauthorized charges on the victim's account, which were allegedly made by Reeves while he was in her care. West Virginia U.S. Senator Joe Manchin will serve as the special guest road captain for the 4th annual Ride for Fallen Service Heroes tomorrow. This year's ride benefits the West Virginia National Guard Foundation, the families of fallen service members, and the establishment of a new Gold Star monument in West Virginia. An alert from the West Virginia Division of Highways: the Water Wheel Bridge on Cabletown Road will be closed to traffic beginning as early as Monday, July the 9th. I'm Adam Boardman, Talk Radio WRNR News.
Hot and sunny this afternoon as temperatures soar into the lower 90s on a very light northwesterly breeze. Tonight with a clear sky, the early morning low back to about 67. And then for tomorrow and for Sunday too, back-to-back days of intense heat. The forecast high near 97 each day. Heat index, that heat-humidity combination, makes it feel like 100 to 105 degrees possibly. We get to Monday, it's still hot and humid with highs in the middle 90s, and that trend carries us right on into the early parts of next week and right on into the 4th of July holiday. I'm Bob Kukin, Talk Radio, WRNR.
The future doesn't wait. Why should you? Blue Ridge Community and Technical College offers over 50 degree and certificate programs in education, IT, culinary arts, engineering, and so much more. Small class sizes, flexible schedules with evening and online classes, with affordable tuition, plus financial aid is available to those who qualify. Now you can go to college. Visit us online at blueridgectc.edu. That's blueridgectc.edu. Stop waiting and enroll today.
Downtown Martinsburg is the place to be for the Fridays at 5 Summer Concert Series from June 1st through August 31st. Enjoy great music and fun with well-known musicians, bands, and Martinsburg artists that'll liven up your spirits at the town square. Concerts begin at 5 p.m. and usually last until 7. Enjoy great music while visiting Martinsburg's Farmers Market, housed on East King Street, where you're able to enjoy fresh fruits and veggies, chicken and pork, and a lot more. Pets are allowed in the square during the concerts, provided they're on a 6-foot leash or less. For the full concert Summer Series lineup, go to MainStreetMartinsburg.com.
Hey, bro, what are you lifting there?
It's part of my spring training regimen.
A cold beer?
Yep.
And a Ben's chili dog?
Uh-huh. I'm just about in mid-season form.
Exciting baseball action and a break from the normal routine? There's a place for that. Nationals Park. On Friday, July 6th, the Nationals take on the Marlins, and the first 25,000 fans take home a Bryce Harper patriotic bobblehead presented by SAIC. Get your tickets at nationals.com.
Welcome back to the program, Eastern Panhandle Talk with Rob and Dave, and the Friday crew today, Delegate Jason Barrett, Attorney Joe Ferretti, and our Thomm, lobbyist for the NRA, and that's our panel, 263-6540 and 263-6586. Our telephone numbers, this segment brought to you by the Joe Ferretti Law Firm. Joe, you can take it from here, Ben. Tell us about the new Joe
I don't
Ferretti
have
Law
a
Firm.
slogan yet, Rob. I don't know what to say, except I'm on my own.
I'm on my. You're not on your own, but I am. That's your new slogan.
I was just
I
thinking,
kind of like
that. That's it.
I was
Let's
just
go
thinking
recut those commercials.
I was just thinking how you introduce people, and I'm thinking about the title you have for Art Thomm. Art Thomm, lobbyist for the NRA.
Did I say it sinisterly?
No, you didn't. It's just lobby. I mean, there's a significant part of our population. I don't think a majority, by the way. But there are people who would listen to that. Art Thomm, lobbyist for the NRA, and they're going to another channel. They don't want to hear from a lobbyist from the NRA.
Yeah, sorry, Hornby.
You know? So there you go.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I think.
Hey, but you know what? At the same time, there's several people that are going to run to their radios and turn that stuff on just to see what the heck I have to say.
See,
nothing.
That's what we were talking about.
It's
before.
nothing, just so you know. But.
Hey, if you don't mind, I don't want to spend the whole hour and a half talking about, if you will, the Supreme Court situation, but the politics
in West Virginia or the U.S.
in the U.S. because I know we want to get to some state issues, but I am interested in everyone's thoughts though on the politics of this, especially as it relates to the Manchin-Morrissey campaign. This is an opportunity, I think.
Hold up your sticker there.
This is an opportunity for Manchin, the minute that nominee is announced, to rush to the nearest microphone and embrace Donald Trump. I think that probably helps him. I think this is an opportunity for Manchin. Agree or disagree? In fact, I wonder in that meeting yesterday if Manchin would say, hey, look, Mr. Prez, tell you what, you got my vote for the Supreme Court guy as long as you stay out of my state in this campaign. Do you think that happens in politics?
I think it would probably have to determine who it is. I don't think Manchin's just going to say to the president, "I'll support whoever your nominee is."
Oh, I think he will.
No, I don't think so.
I think that he wants to support Donald. He needs to support Donald Trump's nominee for Supreme Court. That would be politically. That would be my guess, because to be opposed to Donald Trump's nominee, that gives Pat Morrissey just a huge hole to run through.
Well, it gives him ascendancy.
Look at the math.
Yeah.
What does the math dictate in the state of West Virginia for Joe Manchin? Better to oppose a Donald Trump nominee for Supreme Court, or better to support it?
Support it. Absolutely support it. The minute he announces it.
So you got to look at the math, right?
As a matter of fact, from now until November, I would think it's best for Joe Manchin to support everything Donald Trump does.
Well, I think that he has to do what he thinks is in the best interest of the state. I mean, we're talking about confirming.
Yeah, but he believes what's in the best interest of the state is to get reelected to a 6-year term.
I mean, you're talking about vote or nominating someone to the Supreme Court to serve their, an unexpired term. I mean, to serve out their entire life if they want to. And I think that Joe Manchin and United States senators take that job very seriously. And I understand that everybody plays politics, but at some point, you got to do what's right, whether that's the best thing in the election or not. I mean, we're not talking about, supporting the wall or supporting, maybe some other issue. We're talking about supporting a nominee for the United States Supreme Court. I think that Joe Manchin and other United States senators are going to take that job a little more seriously than just playing politics.
I appreciate your taking the statesman role this morning on that, Jason, but I don't know anyone who understands political dynamics better than you. You know I've got a point on this.
Well, I'm not saying you don't have a point. I'm just saying that they have to. That I think Joe Manchin will I think he'll do what's right for the state of West Virginia, for the country when it comes.
I don't
to
know, Joe.
the
It
Supreme
sounded to
Court
me like
justice.
Jason was telling David he didn't have a point.
Yeah,
I
what
think
he said,
Jason's backtracking right now.
Right. What he said was, David, you have a point. It's just not a point I'm ever going to admit to on this radio program.
That is absolutely right. We'll save that for a private
In
conversation.
fact, David, I think he was trying to dress you down on the air this morning with what he just said.
Well, look, here's the question.
Okay, let me rephrase. If I were Joe Manchin's advisor, I would say, Joe, you know what's best for the state is for you to get reelected.
Well, that's because you have a history of running dirty campaigns. Of course you would say that.
Look, I'm not the one that destroyed a good, honest Republican delegate with a stupid radio ad that you produced that
won a national award.
Yeah, that won a national,
Okay.
and by not telling the truth.
It was the truth.
It was not the truth.
I just want to say there are no such thing as stupid radio ads. On behalf of radio, all ads
but
are
I
good.
paid a lot of money to run on this radio station.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. We appreciate that. And please run more ads in your next campaign.
Here's the question, fellas. What nominee,
Joe, and your radio ads are not stupid either. I find them all to be very good.
sponsor of this show?
Thank you, sir.
What radio? Sorry, Rob, keep me off the radio. What
does this ever happen to you in court? You just you get flustered.
No, I don't have Rob in there with me.
Judge, what's your name?
No, what nominee could President Trump possibly pick that West Virginians would be disappointed in? Think about that. What nominee can he pick that we wouldn't like here in West Virginia? And if you conclude that there is none, then Manchin's path is pretty clear. He's going to have to be supportive.
Oh, I think so, and I think he'll be supportive.
Now, no, you asked me, though, you asked the question, what does this mean politically? Well, okay, he's going to side with the president. Now, he can write off the Democratic Party in terms of having volunteers, money, support, people on the ground knocking on doors helping him. That's what it means politically for him. So he's going to make that rough calculation. It's going to be a difficult one. It's one I think he has to make. He's got to side with the president, but the party's not. I mean, he just lost the political base for people to work for him in this state.
There's the other dynamic, I think, too, is that, you know, in primary elections and in midterm elections, it's the most important thing is the base turnout, is exciting your base, because the turnout just isn't as naturally large as it is in a presidential race. And I wonder if the Supreme Court, not just here in West Virginia, but around the country, I'm wondering whose base gets more excited over this Supreme Court thing, the Republican base, or will the Democratic base get excited because they're going to be out there with campaigns that we're going to lose Roe v. Wade, and, you know, all kinds of bad things are going to happen. So I'm wondering, maybe both bases get excited and we have an unprecedented midterm turnout. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I think you're right. I think the Democrats will be have a bigger turnout. I think this helps Republican turnout in a year that you would assume that they wouldn't, because of history shows after you win elections like that the next year is not friendly to that particular party. But I think that the point that you're making, you know, Joe Manchin has to consider is that if the Democratic base is wound up over this issue, how much can he leave them on voting for this or confirming this Supreme Court nomination when Democrats in some areas of the state, mainly the Eastern Panhandle, is that when they feel that a statewide Democratic candidate moves to the right, moves to the center at times, and isn't as far left as they would like, you know, they've been shown to vote for someone in the Mountain Party, or to not even vote because they say Joe Manchin is too in the middle for them, is too centrist for them. So, you know, it's a balancing act that the senator's going to have to play.
I think most people in West Virginia like Joe Manchin and want a reason to vote for him who are registered Democrats, but in the middle, Art. And if he doesn't support President Trump's nominee, I don't think it works to his benefit. There's not enough in his own party who are happy with him to overcome the moderates and the people who are otherwise registered as Republicans who aren't angry with him yet.
I would have
like him.
I would have stopped it. There's not enough in his party. And here's the thing that I've said for a long, long time. And, you know, a lot of the folks were surprised when the Republicans took over the state and they said, oh, you know, it's because of, 1,500 excuses, and how our state has shifted right. And I don't think that's the case. I think that we've always been a more conservative state. And, you know, it's the party that shifted left and left their people versus
the
their
National
people.
Party.
Yes, but that's what they blame it on. And he has to, as a national politician, he has to accept that. And I think that he's going to have to accept whoever the nominee is, or that base, our core West Virginia, is not going to accept him.
If this confirmation, David, happens before Election Day, and whoever he appoints is already on the court, how much does this factor in the election if it's already over?
I think the impact is probably less, actually, and this probably will be wrapped up 8 weeks prior to the election day. So it won't be going on at the exact time. But I do think, though, people will be able to use it in their messaging in their campaigns, who you voted for, who you didn't vote for in some of these key states. But I think that's a good point, Jason. It won't be going on while the elections are going on.
And you think that if you were advising the Republicans in Washington right now, would you advise them to pump the brakes a little bit and try to get this as close to November as they possibly can?
No, I think I would get it over with as soon as I can. I would just get this over with as soon as possible, and because it's the right thing to do for the nation, Jason.
Well, I'm glad you've come around.
Yeah. We shouldn't play politics with this sort of thing. But the politics, though, I mean, to me, clearly is that your Manchin is going to be on Trump's side on this. I think the other, in fact, probably all the Democrats that are in red states up for re-election this year are probably open to that, and that in itself creates. I mean, I think this is an issue that they weren't expecting to have. I think this is an opportunity for Democrats in red states to support Trump's nominee for the Supreme Court.
Is there a chance that the president nominates someone that's kind of philosophically aligned with Justice Kennedy, someone that's kind of a swing vote at times, sometimes that sides with the folks on the left and sometimes on the right? I mean, is that a possibility? And
for someone like me, I would hope that would be the case. I would be delighted to have another Justice Kennedy who actually sees both sides and who is conservative on, let's say, business issues and progressive on social issues. For my politics, I would love that. However, I don't think that's what we're going to get. I wouldn't think.
Kennedy was apparently, as I heard analysts say, a 2/3 conservative, 1/3 not guy.
We're a long way from the Reagan era when Sandra Day O'Connor and Kennedy were nominated.
On unanimous votes.
You're not going to see those kind of
Kennedy
justices.
was a third choice. Now, don't forget that. We forget that as time has gone by.
I understand. Oh, by the way, in a lame duck year for Reagan, but just comment on my part.
Well, there's quite a few of the justices that have been nominated in even numbered years.
Yeah.
In election years.
But Kennedy took office. He was confirmed in 1988, which was Reagan's lame duck year.
Yep. Okay.
Now, to state politics, and West Virginia State Supreme Court justices first. Before we get to any rent money, the Judiciary Committee met earlier this week as what was it interim session that became a special session, Jason, as if I remember exactly how that worked. But what we have found is now that all 5 justices are under the microscope in some form or fashion, some more seriously than others.
Yeah, and I think that the writing is clearly on the wall for Justice Lawfrey. The chairman of Judiciary in the House is kind of going to oversee these proceedings. It's all going to go through the Judiciary Committee. He wants to take his time, as he says, make sure that this is done properly. And I think this is going to be a really long, drawn-out thing that goes well past that August 14th deadline. The Democrats tried to make sure this was done a little quicker. And the Republican excuse was that, we got the July 4th coming up. We have people that are going to go on vacation. We have weekends, and we're running out of time. Well, you're running out of time because you waited till the end of June to do something about something that everyone in West Virginia knew was a problem in January. So, I really wish that the people of West Virginia could vote to determine who their next Supreme Court justice is, not allow the governor to appoint somebody of his from Greenbrier County or wherever else. So, I think that they've done a disservice by not doing this quickly. I do understand they're wanting to get it right, but they should have just started this process.
Well, let's not count January as a reasonable point to begin this process, because we all know how this last legislative session went, and any legislator who paid any attention to anything other than the teachers was lambasted in social media for not paying attention to the real important stuff in Charleston. So there's no way in January that this stuff could have been considered.
It could have. No, I don't know that. In January, in February, all those times the Judiciary Committee took up no bills related to teacher pay. So I don't understand why they wouldn't have the ability to do that. A. James Manchin was impeached during a regular legislative session. I'm sure they had important issues going on then.
They didn't have a teacher strike.
Well, that's fine. But again, the pay raise bills and the PEIA bills and concerns, none of that runs through the Judiciary Committee.
Well, even so, anybody who paid attention to it would have been accused of not paying attention to the most important thing in the state, which is teachers.
I don't believe that.
I'm just telling you,
that's an excuse for
read
not
social media.
Well,
That's
they were already losing their minds that it took them 9 days to spend $150 million of my money.
I didn't know you had that much money.
That's what they say.
I've been inviting you on a lot more often.
Right, that's what they say, though. They were like, hey, you know what? We're going to spend all this money, and I can't believe it took the Republicans 9 days to decide to spend that much money.
See, I disagree with Jason on this for a couple of reasons. One is if we don't elect the next Supreme Court justice, and I said this yesterday, I don't think that the governor could do any worse than the voters did in electing these yahoos that are on there now.
Don't issue that challenge to the governor.
So I'm not all that concerned. But the more important reason is I don't think that the Republicans don't want to have this done by August 14th. I think most of them would probably like to have it done by August 14th. And I think that if they can, they probably will. I just don't think they wanted their hands tied legislatively by the vote that you all took last week to have it done by August 14th, just in order to have someone be able to be on the ballot. So I think that's really...
Isn't it more important to have a thorough investigation?
That's what they're saying. I mean, so I think that you're the one playing politics. With
what
all due
investigation
respect, I think you and the Democrats are the one playing politics.
What investigation are they going to do? I mean, the evidence is there. There's a legislative audit. We have a legislative auditor, Aaron Allred. This has been done. The evidence is there. I understand they want to do their due diligence. I don't think this takes a month to figure out. Senator Blair said the other day
it might not take a month.
If it took a day or two, that's when he said he would be supportive of it last week. And then, the Republicans came out and said this is, they called on the governor to call a special session for this. So if they want to drag this out as long as they can and it costs the state more money, when we all know what's going to happen at the end of the day.
Hey, look, just so we're clear here, so we understand the Democrat viewpoint here. West Virginia state, local politics when it comes to the Supreme Court investigation, get it done quick. When we get into national politics, when it comes to, Russia or anything else, it's got to take some time.
Or delay the U.S. Supreme Court decision till after November.
Absolutely.
One of them has nothing to do with the other. I mean, you're talking about people voting.
I think he's bringing up an
inconsistency
there that's probably worth mentioning. I mean, you meant that tongue in cheek,
Joe,
though, didn't you?
You are an attorney. Tell me from a legal standpoint, and I understand that an impeachment at the state level is much different than a criminal trial here, but as an attorney, does Jason have a point? Should this have no trouble being done if we're investigating 5 justices by August the 14th?
Well, I listened to your show, as I always do, Rob and Dave.
And we appreciate that. As a sponsor, we love that.
I listened to your show on Tuesday, I believe, and I heard about the standards necessary for impeachment, and they were pretty broad. I think you guys were even taken aback.
They're weird.
About how broad,
it's just weird
and generic,
and general.
Are.
Yes.
So if I look at that and I apply that to Justice Lawfree's case, I agree with Jason.
But that's one.
This is a fait accompli.
We're talking about all 5, though, Joe, because all 5 are potentially under the microscope.
Well,
here.
Sure, and I can't you bifurcate this investigation legislatively, where you take it one at a time? I mean, we're not going to usher them all out at once, are we? I mean,
no, you're right.
You're going to. So we take the one who clearly meets the threshold for impeachment, and you take care of that.
The interview with Riley Moore yesterday, I thought, was educational, and I thought he made some very good points. Mm-hmm. And one of the points that Delegate Riley Moore made, is that there is no real precedent for this, and that what they do now will set precedent in the future. And I think, and one of the things I'd be concerned about by doing this too quickly, is that if you start removing judges for malmanagement, let's say, use that, they didn't manage their department or whatever, well, does that set a precedent in the future where we get one party in control and they just start removing people left and right for malmanagement?
I think it's a legitimate point.
I'm against malmanagement. Don't get me wrong. I don't want any malmanagement going on in state government. But I don't want Jason Barrett to be removed by an angry mob Republican majority and have him impeached because one day they just wake up and say he's,
a malmanager.
He's irritating the crap out of me. He's malmanaging, and we're going to impeach him.
But one of these things that the justice did in committee that I was sitting in, and there is an audio tape of it, is that he lied under oath to the vice chair of finance. That's not malmanagement. That is taking an oath and lying under oath.
Well, Jason, is it also not possible that by not committing to August 14, I think they said July 27 was the day they needed to be done with this in order to have the August 14 ballot issue ready. But by not committing to it, they have not shut out the possibility that the first one could be done before and in plenty of time to have an elected Supreme Court justice on the ballot.
That's a fair point.
They've not shut the door. They've just kept the door open in case it drags out long.
You're right. But some of the talk that when they're going to return, when the Judiciary Committee return, is the week of July 16th. So we're talking about, and maybe they're there before that, but some of the talk is that they may not be there for another 2 weeks.
I've heard 9th or 16th. Have they settled on the 16th?
No, that's what I said. Some of the talk has been the 9th. Well, today's the 29th. So
but aren't there investigators working full-time during that time?
Staff is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Well, that's the work that they need to have done right now.
Well, this is the work that should have been done over the spring and summer when we all knew this was a problem.
Why wasn't it done?
Well, because I don't think they really wanted to impeach him. I think that they wanted to, sweep this under the rug and that everything would be fine and it would just go away. And
until the indictments came down.
Well, then they couldn't say no at that point.
Right. That's your point,
they tried to.
I'm not saying I believe that, but I mean that's your point. And,
right.
And I think it's where I do agree with you on is that this guy appears to be very, very guilty of some pretty big crimes, and the process should move as quickly as possible.
This segment of the program brought to you by the Brown Funeral Homes and Cremations. Robert Fields and Sons, a family-owned full-service funeral home proudly serving our area since 1880. 304-263-6540 and 304-263-6586. Our telephone numbers if you'd like to be a part of our program.
Me mind on fire, me soul on fire, feeling hot, hot, hot. Party people all around me feeling hot, hot, hot.
The Honda 4th of July sales event has brilliant deals on our most popular vehicles, like the Civic, Fit, and Pilot. It's a reason to celebrate across the country, from the Liberty Bell to Hollywood, and even back up to Niagara Falls. So come discover the 2018 KBB.com Best Overall Brand during the Honda 4th of July sales event, now at your Honda dealer.
Miller Honda south of Winchester, home of the lifetime powertrain warranty. www.mymillerhonda.com.
Based on 2018 brand image awards from Kelly Blue Book. Visit KBB.com for more information.
The Wellness Center at Berkeley Medical Center has introduced a 10-week sports-specific training program called SPEED for 12 to 17-year-old athletes. The goal of SPEED is to evaluate each individual athlete, assess their deficiencies, and design programs to improve the athlete's performance. The new program for young athletes includes strength and conditioning coaching from the Wellness Center pros, as well as the Technogym equipment. If you're interested in building a foundation of long-term athletic success and injury prevention for your athlete, contact the Wellness Center at Berkeley Medical Center.
I'm Joe Ferretti of Ferretti Law Office. The most common question I hear from people injured in an automobile wreck or because someone else was at fault is, can their insurance company do that? If you call Ferretti Law Office at 264-8505, I will answer that question and other questions you have for free. Get educated and get ready to fight back. Call 264-8505 to protect your rights and get the compensation you deserve. Put my 31 years of personal injury and trial experience to work for you. At Ferretti Law Office, we're here to help.
L.A. Roberts is Berkeley County's oldest jeweler, where every season is new and exciting. In fact, new is old school to us, and though it's nothing new, our old traditions like exceptional service, quality, and value maintain L.A. Roberts Jewelers as the old master among so many new kids on the block. Whether you're a newcomer or part of the old guard, entrust all your fine jewelry needs to L.A. Roberts, Old World Jewelers for a new age, in historic downtown Martinsburg.
segment of our program brought to you this morning by Bechtel Jewelers, West Virginia's largest Pandora retailer, Route 11 South Inwood, next to Viva Mexico. Big thanks to all of our sponsors of Eastern Panhandle Talk. Monday through Friday. Again, next week we're on Monday and Tuesday. It's a holiday Wednesday. I'm out Thursday and Friday. David will be here with Matt Miller filling in for me next week in the host chair here. David Welch is here, of course. Jason Barrett, Joe Ferretti, and Art Thomm, too, as we turn our attention toward, and this is where Joe's going to come in with his legal knowledge here, and Jason with his elected delegate knowledge as to what the state's options are here. What is the deal with the rent payment at the mall in Morgantown? And I understand Fairmont location this morning, too, with the $31,000 a month the state was paying since 2015 until February of 2018, when the legislative audit showed that we were paying $31,000 a month for a property nobody was actually occupying. And to make matters worse,
Waste, fraud, and abuse, they call that.
we found out from Rob Cornelius on Monday that not only was the state paying $31,000 a month for a space that they were no longer using for over 2 years, but to double down, literally, they moved out of the $31,000 a month space without canceling the lease into a $60,000 a month space. So when I say double down, in this case, I mean it literally, Jason.
Well, and I don't know all the details of that. I don't know if this is a building we're buying. What is the term of the loan? At the end of the day, is this a good purchase? Are there other offices sharing that space and therefore paying some of that, or have we combined a couple of offices into one building? So I think there's some questions that need to be answered. On the surface, paying $60 above, twice as much as you were paying is a problem for state government to spend that kind of money. But I think there's some other factors in there, questions that need answered that I don't have answers.
Like the one is, okay, so maybe there's a reason why you needed a $60,000 a month space instead of a $30,000, but how about canceling the lease on the $31,000 a month space?
Because we had the absurd interview yesterday with the current owner of this Middletown Mall space who bought...
Now put yourself in his shoes, Joe.
I am. I mean, he bought the space out of bankruptcy. And he is saying that in the bankruptcy records, there's no record of the state ever having canceled the lease.
So he buys it thinking, okay, I've got one tenant paying $30,000 right here.
Well, and he has the cojones to ask for his rent for the last month.
B4 is his last name.
Yeah, he wants his money. He said, they owe me money. They owe me for last month. And if they give me a 30-day notice, then the lease will be over. That's all that needs to take place. So this guy, he wants paid.
David B4. Because when he bought it out of bankruptcy, it showed on the, I don't know the legal terms for all this, but it showed that the state was a tenant and was paying and still owed $31,000 for a month for a lease. He says he has no record from his bankruptcy records that were given to him when he bought the property of being canceled.
And he didn't even have to invoice him. He just got that money.
That's true.
I mean, really.
That's part of the problem.
That's a
the
fact.
invoices were generated by
Exactly.
the DHHR.
That's exactly
without
right.
a bill.
By one person in DHHR had the ability to generate the invoice, to approve it, and to send it, and to send a payment. One person had the authority in DHHR to be able to do that with no oversight. That's the problem.
For over 2 years.
Yes. And where is there a lease cancellation? Is there some document that proves this that was sent to this landlord that he received that? And so typically if I was the tenant and I was going to send a notification of lease cancellation to the landlord, I would send that certified where it was signed for, and I had proof of receipt. So if the state has done that, where is it?
And legally speaking, if, and I don't know the facts here, but if the state was on a lease for a specific term, let's say it was a 1-year lease, and after the year's up, neither the landlord nor the tenant do anything about renewing or not renewing or giving notice, they just keep going on as they go. They keep, the tenant stays and keeps paying rent and the landlord keeps accepting the rent. The lease then conforms to a month-to-month lease.
Sure.
Breakable with a 30-day notice by either party.
That's the law.
That's the law. So I don't know what the term of the lease was, whether 1 year, 2 year, 5 year, who knows. Now, it's not unusual in a lease situation for somebody like a lease apartment and you got a 1 year lease, but you move out in month 8. you're still on the hook for the other 4 months. You keep paying rent, even though
unless they move somebody else in there to take your place.
But the leasehold and the landlord can keep it empty and collect rent, and that's not an unusual situation where you have a leasehold interest and the property empty because the tenant had to move out early. But in a situation where it's been empty for over 2 years, I have to imagine that legally this became a month-to-month lease between the state and the landlord, and all it took was 30 days notice to get out.
So when the lease expires and the tenant moves out, do they have to send written notice that they're leaving?
No. If it's a 1-year lease,
okay. So if
the tenant is not required to give notice, the tenant is only and it's only necessary for the tenant to vacate within 1 year, or in that year term. So the tenant can leave without notice, just pack up and go. Landlord comes in day one after the year, so control and releases it.
This is where it gets even better. And I know you're thinking, how could it? But it does. All right. In my file, I have a lease, David Biafora said. That's all that was given to me during bankruptcy. He has, however, seen an unsigned, undated memo on real estate division letterhead that described moving out of the property in 2015. He thinks that's strange, too, according to the story on the Metro News website. There's no date on it, no signature, nothing. It sounds like they have a draft letter, or maybe they made this letter up and don't want to sign it and date it. We've read this thing like 10 times, is the quote in the story. So he's given a letter that says, we moved out this month. There's no signature. There's no date. It sounds like that deal when you went to school and forgot your homework and you wrote the note that your parents, Joe forgot his homework, signed Joe's dad. That's kind of like what this letter is.
Yeah, it sounds like a CYA move. That's all. I mean, unsigned, undated, and it doesn't even specify like we are terminating our lease, or it just says we're leaving.
So as a taxpayer, I would imagine a lot of taxpayers are asking themselves this question, which is, how many more of these are going on around the state of West Virginia? How many more $30,000 a month situations are happening and nobody knows it except one person in DHHR, as Jason said? And maybe there's none, but it's a question that I think people are asking themselves right now. And then they ask themselves, because that's just what we do as human beings, well, whose fault is it? Who's to blame? And once we find that out, is there any criminal activity here? Is that money going somewhere where it shouldn't be going? Is this rampant? Is this just going on all over the state of West Virginia? That's what taxpayers are asking themselves
here's
right now.
how my mind works, which is $31,000 a month to the tune of almost $1 million, and nobody knew about this, heard about it, or looked into it. Is somebody getting a campaign contribution? Is there money somewhere? Is there a trail here somewhere that implicates somebody? Because, you lose $10,000 in state government or federal government, in the grand scheme of the budget, okay, but we're talking about $1 million here, and nobody noticed it, Jason?
I don't understand. There's no excuse for it. I mean, this is just more, if it's not corruption, and the issue with Rise and Commerce isn't corruption, then this is just gross incompetence by this administration in two separate departments.
Yeah, we've asked rhetorically.
That we know of.
We've asked rhetorically over the past few days, speaking of Rise, how many homes could have been built on $1 million?
At least 10,
in the
15.
flood victim area. And that's how gross this is. Of course, that's a whole other issue. But I think voters and taxpayers, they combine these issues. They're looking at a state where we have $1 million rents going to vacant space. We can't get $150 million of federal money into reestablish lives of people whose homes were lost in the flood area. We have a governor that doesn't show up for work more than 24 days in almost 2 years now. And I think
this year.
This year, just this year. I think West Virginians are looking at the state government and saying, this is ridiculous. This just is ridiculous. And so who do they blame it on? We talked to Eric Householder the other day, and he said, I'm paraphrasing Eric, but he said, that's the reason I ran, so we wouldn't have I wanted to clear out the waste, fraud, and abuse. So is this an example of the Republican leadership coming in 4 years ago and clearing out waste, fraud, and abuse? And this is what they're trying to do. They'll blame it all on, we've heard the line before. We're going to blame it. Democrats ran things for 80 years, and we're trying to undo all of those things. Or, Jason, is it that they've had 4 years to clean this up, and it isn't cleaned up yet? I don't know. I don't know if this has a political ramification other than the fact that people are just a little ticked off.
I don't know that it does either, but it's going to be really hard to blame Democrats right now. We're not in charge of anything in West Virginia, so to blame us for rise or blame us for this, I don't know how that you can do that. I think that part of the problem is that
that would be a stretch. I would.
Yeah, we have a governor that,
in all fairness to the Democratic Party,
that has showed up around 30 days in 6 months. And he has a very, he's a macro manager for sure. He's hands off. He puts these secretaries that are friends of his in a lot of cases to run the various agencies. And I'm curious and I'm concerned that maybe they have the same style, is that when he hires somebody to do something, if they don't do it, he just fires them and moves on. And there's very little oversight. There's very little accountability on his part. Does he hire people that are doing the exact same thing within the agency? Does he hire Woody Thrasher to be the Commerce Secretary, and Woody has the same approach that's kind of hands-off, let the people do their job, and if they don't do it, we just fire them? Well, there has to be some accountability, and there has to be responsibility from those that are in charge, and I think that starts with the governor, and then it goes on down to the cabinet secretaries. If they're not able to provide the necessary oversight with their department, then they're clearly not the right person for the job.
Joe, is there any type of legal obligation that the landlord has in this situation to give any money back? If he's got a lease that the state has never broken officially?
Well, that's you just hit the nail on the head. If he's got a contract that specifies he's supposed to get $31,000 a month, and that check keeps coming, and nobody's ever canceled that contract, legally, I don't see why you have to return the money.
Jason, is there anything the state can do to get money back from this situation, even though it looks like the state didn't officially break the lease?
I trust Joe's legal opinion on that, and it makes sense to me that, if the lease is still valid and they paid it, how could you get it back?
Is there a moral obligation on the landlord to? And I know this guy just bought the place out of bankruptcy, so we can't blame him for a year and a half of the money art. But does he have a moral obligation?
I was just thinking the same thing. I don't even think he has a moral obligation to give the money back. I can understand where people will say, well, that's $31,000 of the state's money, of the taxpayer funding, but that was a contract, and that they were in business with this gentleman or the previous owner, and he took it over. To rent that space, and he wasn't renting the space to someone else because they were paying for it.
As he said, David, look, it's not unusual for offices to be empty. People move out and they still have time left on their lease. Do you think he's under a moral obligation to give any money back?
Yes, moral obligation. I think he should be.
Why?
Because he. Somewhere along the line, there was a failure to say to someone, look, you're paying for this space and no one's using it. I just think ethically there would have been someone should have done that. Now, the new owner, who knows nothing about the history, buys this out of bankruptcy. I actually don't blame him for wanting to keep the money when all he's saying is give me a 30-day notice and you won't have to pay it anymore.
Right.
That's all he's asked for. So I kind of don't blame him because he bought that building out of bankruptcy in part because I would imagine
got a tenant.
There's $30,000 of money coming in. So when he calculated the whole math on it, said, well, I'm getting a bargain deal on this, and besides, the state's got $30,000. I don't know what they want to use the space for. I don't care what they want to use the space for. The fact is, there's $30,000 of income coming in. So I don't blame the current owner for taking a position that he's taken right now. But the previous owner, I think that. I don't know legally how that all works, but morally, sure, I think he did wrong. He should have informed someone, hey, you guys need to stop the $30,000 because no one's occupying the space. I'm just letting you know. You would have done that, Rob.
I probably would have, yes.
Yeah.
Well, my first year of law school, we learned that morals got nothing to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a term called unconscionability, where the bargaining positions of the two parties are so diverse and so unequal that if they enter into a contract, sometimes the contract's voided because it's just unconscionable to hold the parties to the terms of the contract. But here you got sophisticated parties on both sides. You got the state of West Virginia and you got a mall owner. So you're not into a situation where there's unequal bargaining power here. They both have the sophistication to know how to handle contracts and get in and get out of them. And if one party failed to do it, the other party is not going to suffer any repercussions from that because we're thinking they're taking advantage of the state. It's a contract between two equal parties with sophisticated lawyers on both sides handling these matters. The state screwed up. They're going to owe the money.
David, we had J.B. McCuskey, the state auditor, on earlier this week, and he said there was more to come.
Yes, he
did. He wasn't at liberty to talk about it yet.
He said there was more to come, and we tried to get him to talk about what those might be, and he was not in a position to be able to share that. But he gave us confidence that there is going to be more stories like this coming out.
Yeah, the old follow the money thing you were talking about.
Yeah, and I thought he, by the way, that's the first time I'd really talked to him in depth for a long time. I found him to be very credible, very straightforward. I was really impressed with him.
Yeah, JB was first elected with me in the House in 2012, and I think that...
And he's really made something of himself since
I think he does a really good job.
Is that a shot at Jason?
No, I'm just mentioning it.
He tried not to smile.
D-Dub, I got to give you a fist bump. That was actually,
as nice as I am to you, this is the disrespect.
Oh, yeah, you're so nice to me.
You have to admit, Jason, that was a really quick, good line.
I don't even think he got it. We got the joke before he did. But I think JB does...
Are you calling me dim-witted?
Well, maybe you're quicker than I thought.
Okay.
I think JB does do a good job. He comes to the Finance Committee as all agencies and Board of Public Works do. His budget he's very clear. He's very concise. He understands the auditor's office better than any head, I think, any head of any government agency or anything. He's very hands-on. He puts the time in, and he's very Republican, but I think he does a really good job.
Yeah, I feel like writing him a letter and asking him if I can help him become governor or something. I was just that impressed with him. I really was. I liked him a lot. I don't know. Is he an older guy, younger guy?
He's probably a couple years older than I am.
Really?
He's probably
Is he
about
still in his 30s?
He may be 40 or
really. Wow.
40.
You have any idea what he's hinting at, Jason? Have you seen any of these advanced reports at all in regards to this audit?
No, I haven't.
When is that stuff typically made available to legislators?
This is kind of uncharted water for me. I would assume very shortly.
It's 9:48. Another break coming your way. We'll be right back with another segment after this.
It's the Jeep Celebration event at Miller's Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram in Martinsburg. Stop in now for great deals on a great line of Jeep products. Get $1,000 cash back on a 2019 Jeep Cherokee with financing at 0% for 60 months. How about a new 2019 Cherokee Latitude 4x4, only $219 a month, or a 2018 Jeep Wrangler JK for only $296 a month. Get bonus cash up to $6,000 off a 2018 Renegade, plus $500 trade. Stop by and test drive a Chrysler Pacifica and get free movie passes. It's all at the Jeep Celebration event at Miller's Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram, home of the lifetime powertrain warranty on Kelly Island Road, or online at millerschryslerjeep.com. All payments based on approved credit, taxes, tags, and processing fees extra. See dealer for details.
Let's see. Load the clothes in the washing machine. Add detergent. Turn on the washer. Wait, where's all this water coming from? Oh, no!
Disasters happen. Fire, water, and natural disasters. Tell your insurance provider you prefer Blue Ridge Property Restore. Blue Ridge Property Restore, getting you back from disaster faster.
She's gonna kill me.
Talk Radio WRNR is teaming up with the Good Samaritan Free Clinic at 601 South Raleigh Street in Martinsburg for their first ever neighborhood block party. With the support of many in our community, the Good Samaritan Free Clinic has been providing free medical and spiritual care since 2005. On July the 28th from noon until 4, come on by the corner of Raleigh Street and Addition for an afternoon of fun, games, cotton candy, face painting, popcorn, and smiles galore. Be a part of the fun and excitement. For more information or to be a sponsor, contact Mary Runkles at 304-582-0350. This segment of the program brought to you by the Washington Nationals. MLB At Bat is your #1 Nationals app. Customize your experience to catch every moment this season. Get Nationals home screen icons and features like MLB.TV Game of the Day, pitch tracking, in-game highlights, live radio broadcasts, stats, news, and more. Download MLB At Bat today. Rob and Dave here along with Delegate Jason Barrett, Attorney Joe Ferretti, and from the NRA Lobbyist, Art Thomm, who's been relatively quiet over the last half of an hour here, Art. Make me a little nervous when you're quiet.
He's plotting a comeback, I think, though.
D-Dub, last week you called the governor the least popular man in the state. Do you hold by that?
Well, there's some recent polling information done in the state that has made its way around the media circuits, done by a company called Public Policy Polling, and it shows a number of different things. One of them that was interesting that popped out of here is that Manchin's getting 25% of Trump voters right now, which is a problem for Pat Morrissey going forward. It does confirm earlier polling that was out that basically shows Manchin with a 50 to 42 lead somewhere in that neighborhood at this juncture. It doesn't mean a lot. It just means that Manchin's ahead here with 3 or 4 months to go. Pat Morrissey still has plenty of time to catch up. But the most amazing part of this poll, I thought, was just how Governor Justice is absolutely in the tank in terms of approval rating in the state, hovering around 27%, 24% of Democrats approve of him, only 32% of Republicans approve of his job performance so well. This is very unusual for a governor not even 2 years into his term to be this incredibly unpopular. And just sort of wondering, what are some of the reasons for this? What's driving this? Is it the party change, perhaps, where the party he left feels betrayed and the party he joined doesn't think he's, really, a member of their party? Is it all the antics? Is it the not showing up for work? Is it? It's just maybe it's all of the above. I don't know.
I think you're right. I think it is all of the above. And for some of the antics, Donald Trump has numbers in West Virginia around 62, I think, and his antics don't hurt his poll numbers, but the governors seem to. So, I think he's trying very hard, and he claims that he was had a meeting with the president to discuss coal the other day. I do agree that they had a meeting. I don't know if the future of coal and that was the real intent of the meeting, or it was to help his ratings, his polling numbers in West Virginia, to show how close and tight he is with the president, able to go have a meeting with him. So I think that the governor's really struggling to latch on to the president's coattails in West Virginia. And, David, that you make a good point that his numbers are in the tank, but that poll ended June 13th. So I think his numbers are even worse than what you're speaking about.
And that would be because why? Since June 13th?
Well, you've had more come out about RISE, and now we have this issue with DHHR. And I think, some of this stuff is going to continue, and it all comes back to his administration and the various state agencies.
It's unlikely we're going to see the governor on anybody's campaign trail this fall. If you're running for delegate as a Republican or state senator or any office, you're probably not inviting the governor in to campaign for you.
I'm not exactly sure what they'll do there. I wouldn't be surprised if that were not the case.
And which is unfortunate if you're a Republican candidate, because if you have a governor of your own party, you want, usually under normal circumstances, right, you want the governor to come in and do a fundraiser for you, make a few media appearances, all of that. But I'm pretty sure that this is going to be a governor uninvited to most of this kind of things.
Well, and he doesn't have a history of doing that anyway. I mean, if he doesn't show up to work, what makes anybody think he would show up for a campaign event? He hasn't. In the past, he's never really gone out and tried to help other members of the legislature or anybody else campaigning. So I wouldn't think that would happen anyway. The biggest thing in that poll to me that stands out the most is that when voters were asked the right track, wrong track question, do you think the country is on the right track? 59% of the people in West Virginia say that the country is on the right track.
That's a very high number, by the way.
33 said wrong track, 7% said undecided. When the same question was asked of the same people about West Virginia, the answer was 37% say right track, 46 say wrong track, and 18 say they're not sure.
So in plain English, that means?
That means that while the president may be extremely popular and that he's doing a good job in the eyes of
that's why they think that we're on the right track, because they have
right.
confidence in Donald Trump.
They don't have the same confidence in this governor or this legislature. And I don't know that how much the president is going to be able to help pull that number up. That's a 22-point difference.
Yeah, it's quite a startling number.
Right, for a very...
And who did these polls?
I forget the name.
It was Public Policy. There's a company that
Oh.
was listed on the Metro News article.
Public Policy.
Well, the one crowning achievement that the governor's had so far during his tenure has been the road bond. And maybe it's unfair for us up here to ask this question because I don't think a lot of the road bond money is coming up here anyhow. So, because our roads seem to be in decent shape compared to other parts of the state. But are we getting any feedback from elsewhere in the state that this is making a difference, that there's hiring going on, all that the numbers he touted about how many jobs we're going to create and where we're going to build new roads?
Well, I think that's just starting to kick in now, isn't it, Jason?
I think so.
Yeah. Is it fair yet to ask?
Have we begun spending the money yet?
I think the first phase is really close. I think that they've started in some of the turnpike stuff and around. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe so in southern West Virginia.
But I guess the celebration around that has kind of dissipated a good bit, and that's the one achievement. It's been downhill since then.
Well, what I've always said about roads, everybody wants a better road on the roads they drive in. If you're building better roads on the roads you don't drive on, you don't really care, and it's not going to translate into political points for anybody who might have led that effort. And so if they're building roads, I'm sure his numbers are probably better in a county that's getting a brand new highway or an old road repaved. But as a general rule, that issue is not really working for him.
Well, what you see in some of the comment sections now is if we can't handle a lease payment on a building effectively, how are we going to manage $1.5 billion dollars in road bond money? I mean, think about if you multiply that as a ratio, how much waste, fraud, and abuse people are speculating might be taking place in that.
Here's why I think he has bad numbers. He's inconsistent. He doesn't have a clear vision for the state's future. He doesn't articulate a solid message. He's all over the place. He's changing here and changing there. No one believes anything he says.
I would just like to state, just put it out there, but while we're talking about a polling that says that the people aren't approving of our current legislature, Public Policy Polling is a Democratic polling agency.
9:58, final segment next. Get those final thoughts ready.
It's the Jeep Celebration event at Miller's Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram in Martinsburg. Stop in now for great deals on a great line of Jeep products. Get $1,000 cash back on a 2019 Jeep Cherokee with financing at 0% for 60 months. How about a new 2019 Cherokee Latitude 4x4, only $219 a month, or a 2018 Jeep Wrangler JK for only $296 a month. Get bonus cash up to $6,000 off a 2018 Renegade, plus $500 trade. Stop by and test drive a Chrysler Pacifica and get free movie passes. It's all at the Jeep Celebration event at Miller's Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram, home of the lifetime powertrain warranty on Kelly Island Road, or online at millerschryslerjeep.com. All payments based on approved credit, taxes, tags, and processing fees extra. See dealer for details.
Final segment brought to you by Farmers and Mechanics Insurance Companies. When it comes to your home, auto, farm, or business, we're trusted, reliable, and experienced. With our final thoughts, Jason Barrett.
Well, happy Independence Day to everyone, and I think that we should all show a little more independence in our politics.
Joe Ferretti.
60 seconds to respond to the shooter yesterday. Those who oppose paid firefighters in Berkeley County, you get what you pay for.
Art Thomm.
Patrick Morrissey for U.S. Senate. Trump endorsed.
Take a candy bar, Rob.
Delegate Jason Barrett, thank you.
Everybody gets a candy
Art Thomm,
bar.
Thank you. Joe Ferretti, thank you. David Welch, I am a space cadet, apparently.
I mean,
my Snickers bar.
Everybody gets a candy bar, and they're finally done.
Basic.
You have a final thought, David?
I'm the hangry one. That's a combination of hungry and angry, which describes my mood today, actually. So there you go.
Glenn Beck is next. This is Talk Radio WRNR Martinsburg. Have a great weekend. Talk to you again in 70 short hours.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
This is CBS News on the Hour, sponsored by TerrorWorks Relief.
I'm Deborah Rodriguez, the man suspected of orchestrating a shooting rampage at a newspaper